this game's going to take me a lot less time than the last one. Than the last run-through of it. Why does he start our gaze directed up here at the sky that we can't reach, and it's the last time we're going to see it? In fact, we're going to see lava before we're done.
So first off, I'm sure you can deduce this, but this game is not connected to the internet. All of the notes that you're going to see have been written by Coda. This was actually the first game of his that I ever played. This was shortly after I met him at a weekend game jam in Sacramento, where I grew up. I saw him working on this very level, and it was just so different from anything that anyone else was doing. So right away I was like, I have to be friends with this person. In retrospect, I think I was probably a bit too pushy, trying to get his attention. I was over-enthusiastic. But he was very gracious about it and very patient with me. And I cooled off eventually. Oh, feel free to skip over any of these notes if they're not doing anything for you. Nothing extra is going to happen if you read all of them. Either way, to me they convey a sense of loneliness. I see this person who's filled with thoughts and feelings and beliefs and has no way to express them except as scattered and unheard voices in a game that wasn't meant to be played.
What do you mean it wasn't meant to be played? You just said he was working on it at a game jam.
But it's ironic, isn't it? That in playing this game and seeing how alone Coda often felt, that we get to know him better and actually kind of connect with him. And I have to be honest with you, this idea is really seductive to me. That I could just play someone's game and see the voices in their head and get to know them better and have to do less of the messy in-person socializing. I could just get to know you through your work. I think this is why I always like Coda's games.
Okay. What?
You have an idea.
First of all, I think it's hysterical that the message I had up on screen during that whole last sequence was...
I was just thinking that.
Because I am 5. But...
I love that that's right as it triggers like a very deep discussion.
Oh, I made a
about,
beeline
like,
for that one. I was like, I'm not going to look at any of these notes except my old friend Butt. We're going to revisit and have some good times together. But... Now you realize what Davey just said, though. How nice it would be if I could get to know someone through their work without any of that messy in-person socializing. Well, that's the exact sort of social anxiety that I was accusing Coda of having through their games. So the question is, are the later games, like the stage game, meant to be made specifically for Davey to play? Or... do they both have this same sort of social anxiety, which is perhaps part of the reason they feel connection?
Right, because if it was made specifically for Davey to play, then it's hugely insulting. Right. It's like, I know you have this anxiety, and I know that you play and obsess over my game, so I made a game that forces you to live in this anxious state.
But, okay, I dispute that. And I think it's fundamentally obvious that this is not a game that was never meant to be played. He just said he ran into Coda making it at a game jam.
Right, which is a public place.
How do you possibly... Narrator Davey is just incredibly narcissistic, right? He's only seeing Coda as Coda impacts him, Davey.
Yep.
He's not letting Coda be his own person in his mental model of him. And that I can certainly see how that could lead to the sort of intense emotional reaction that Coda will have in 2011. I can see why that is the sort of person you would not want to be connected to, that can't see you as a person in your own right, but only as a mirror of themselves. I mean... Actually, yeah, that's kind of the textbook, not literally the textbook, because the medical textbooks have other thing, but that's narcissism. When you can only see other people as players in your life story. You can't really read them as their own people. And that increasingly seems to be what Davey is doing with Coda, like the manipulation of the games. And it's like, is he refusing to acknowledge because he's trying to trick, or does he genuinely not realize that this is not something Coda intended?
Yeah. It'd be very interesting, and I hope we do get more of the things that go on outside of the games, more information into their relationship. I think that's going to be important in unpacking all this.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, let's continue looking at Butt while Davey tells his deep thoughts.
So much is because it felt like they let me have that connection. I felt as though he was inviting me personally into his world.
Butt.
And then I feel less lonely too.
Butt. I'm 5. What was that? Someday I will meet the person who made this.
It's kind of fun. Before we had the narrator, we were exploring these games and trying to learn as much as we can about Coda, but interestingly, on the second playthrough, it's like we're trying to learn as much as we can about Davey. That wasn't something that I realized we would be doing when we set out to begin on this experiment, but it's kind of interesting.
I am compelled. I'm telling you though, I think there is I think there's still a very strong case to be made for Coda feeling himself a lot of social anxiety and fear of the future. Because here's the thing, maybe the player in the game is not meant to be Coda, maybe that's not the point, but you can only write these thoughts if you have them. The person who came up with, not Cabbage Shapes Our Nation, sorry. The person who comes up with this one, that is a person, like, you don't... There's enough of little things like this to say that maybe Coda isn't himself scared of the future and of making decisions and locking off the past, but he certainly thought about it a lot. And he's interested in that fear, even if he does not suffer from it himself. Also, I'm just noticing the texture difference between the stone and the wall there is quite disconcerting. Anyway.
I like the little different sounds that they make, each one.
Don't the chimes keep you going? One of the text bubbles said that.
Oh.
And of course, like, the painting is made up of dots, people's thoughts are made up of dots. Next time I will do better. Like, the painting is made up of people, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Or at least of their ideas. Surprised Davey has no comment on the painting. Ethical? There. So, someone in the thread commented, and I was waiting until this moment to bring it up, this message that repeats, it's on one of those other ones there, Devil Tower Star. Those are the 15th, 16th, and 17th cards of the major arcana in a tarot deck. And the code wheel in the final Coda level, the tower, the code is 151617. And Coda at one point complains, I'm worried that I'm leaving solutions between games. So in fact,
interesting.
This phrase here in this game is the solution for a game he hasn't made yet. Now, the problem there is that Coda is complaining like, oh, I'm worried I'm hiding solutions in between games. No, that's not what's happening in all probability. Given that he doesn't like them, he probably didn't reach back for a clue. He probably has some sort of obsession with those 3 cards. And so those 3 cards are a resonant thing. And so when he goes to look for something, he keeps coming up on that same idea again and again and again.
Those are 3 very video game oriented tarot cards. If you think about it, it almost sounds like Bowser's Castle in Super Mario.
No, stop. I'm going to tell you what the cards
Why?
are. Because the cards have meaning. And like tarot cards.
Tell me.
Oh crap! Now I'm trying to remember. Devil. Fuck. Tell you what. I'm gonna when we pause at like the 90-minute video break, I'm gonna go and look them up before we start the second half of this recording. Let's put that discussion on hold for right now, because I realize I don't know. I think I'm confusing devil and death, and give me a sec. All right, we're gonna come back to this discussion. Sorry, this is...
At the end of this level, we're going to see the puzzle again. And here, I'll tell you what I think the puzzle means. Each of these games represents an idea.
Davey is adding in external motivation.
Why do you say that?
Davey, oh, jeez. At the end of the level, we'll see the puzzle again, and there I'll tell you what I think it means.
That's motivating you to finish the level.
Extrinsic, but it's extrinsic motivation to finish the level.
Meaning, I'll give you this reward outside of the game. You're not self-motivated.
Exactly.
To get to the end.
And this is a big thing in game design still, is the difference between our players playing your game because of intrinsic or extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation, like the purest form being the Skinner box, right? Like you do a thing, you get a reward, and getting the reward is what makes you want to keep doing the thing. But intrinsic motivation is that the player gets a sort of inherent joy and a fundamental pleasure out of the act of playing without any necessary reward for it.
But in this case, in this particular level, there's a ton of extrinsic motivation built into those dots. The fact that they have the rewarding sound effect that keeps you going, and that they're a breadcrumb trail, and that, it kind of sounds like a casino. I mean, you're getting an auditory reward, not a gameplay reward, but there are, rewards all throughout.
Yeah, that's a really good point. But I mean,
so Davey's not actually betraying Coda too much.
No, but Davey certainly believes strongly in extrinsic motivation because the lampposts. Well,
sure.
We're still going with the assumption... Oh, okay. Interesting. I'm still going with the assumption that he did add those, but we'll have to see if that changes in the end. But the impression I have right now is that, yeah, Davey believes games require extrinsic motivation. And he just tried to give it to us through his narration. You want to keep going down because there will be a secret at the bottom.
But Davey packaged all these things up and released them on Steam, and he didn't put any achievements in them. Achievements are one of the biggest examples of extrinsic motivation.
That is true. And in fact, he specifically mentions that there's no achievement or reward for finding all the little dots. Oh, boy. Interesting.
That was on Coda's mind at the time that he was making it. And the puzzle is a way of closing the door on a previous chapter of his life before moving on to the next one.
There's whispers. There are whispers in the soundtrack.
The whisper machine.
Well, yes, actually. And also, does it have to do with proximity to the... Oh, there's 3 dots again. I'm trying to make sure I notice them in every game now.
In each of his games, after exploring a theme that, he might find difficult, Coda can then place this puzzle that he knows has a reliable solution, he understands exactly how it works, and so it gives him a simple mechanism for moving on.
Wow. That makes Coda sound vaguely autistic, which I'm aware is my own diagnosis, but not from this.
Do you agree with the interpretation of the puzzle?
I mean,
And because there's this dark area between the doors, a space between spaces, before you move on, you get to pause. Just for a moment, a few seconds to reflect on and let go of the events that led you here. To step back and connect the pieces together. To grasp at that elusive bigger picture.
that is kind of bunk. Okay. Generally, I mean, the idea of it being a closing of one door to move on is, yes, that's key to it. I disagree with this interpretation of the center, though. This space is creepy. It's weird. There's that mist effect, and we saw this mist all the way back from the very first time, but this is an eerie and uncomfortable space. Have they all had skylights up there? Or light sources? Visible light sources, that is? So
I think so, yeah.
Okay, I've never looked up before, I guess. I mean, this is... So I read this as representative of a sort of fear of this space. This space is something you have to learn to be comfortable in.
And so, like, you would just want to run through it and lock the door.
But
So that's like...
But there has to be a time that you spend trapped here. You can't escape that one moment where, you're waiting and you're trapped.
So maybe almost every part of Davy's interpretation is correct, except for the part where he says that you can enjoy this peaceful moment of reflection. It's more like...
I think Coda is trying to enjoy it. I mean, that's why there's all that dialogue about, like, can you learn to live peacefully in the space? I kind of... Hang on. Where is it? Somewhere in here. There! Guys, it's not so bad in here. A bunch of people are panicking, but there's someone trying to... Of course, how much of this is projecting onto Coda himself versus what Coda sees in people? Maybe Coda does want us to be comfortable in the space in between.
Yep.
And maybe Coda views moving onwards as a fundamentally unsatisfying activity. After all, what do you get for moving onward?
That much is consistent with Davy's analysis. I think the only part that is different is whether you enjoy being there or not. No comment.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, I agree with Davy's interpretation of the puzzle. I think it's a good interpretation.
Generally.
Okay, this one is tough. It's gonna kinda just spin its own wheels for a few minutes. Hang with it.
Porn stars die too.
Yeah, and there's it's a sort of weird thumpy soundtrack to this one.
See, like, this is it. The whole game. And there's nothing that's particularly interesting about it. You just walk to the end of a hallway. Except, for some reason, Coda gets really fixated on this prison that has all of this modern furniture. And I don't know why, but he decides he needs to revisit this prison. He's gonna start over, use the same assets, turn it into something else. Okay, cool. Here's version 2.
Someone pointed out, by the way, this is one of the most obvious points of Davy manipulating our perception of Coda's games, and the idea that maybe a game needs space to breathe.
Right, because he just forces us to spend a small amount of time in each one, and it gets even more rapid as we play through.
Exactly. And like that first one, that clearly doesn't end. You're trapped at the bottom of the well. And, okay, that's the game. But it doesn't turn it off, right? Davy clearly is the one who turned that one off.
Maybe if you waited an hour, something would happen, like in the other prison
I don't
game.
know. Exactly. That's totally possible. I mean, again, it's designed to make you feel a thing, and Davy's not really letting it have that space or ability to make you feel.
I like this sequence a lot. It's just the type of absurd. It's like my kind of humor.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of shows that Coda does have a sense of humor about things, though.
Yes, it does.
It's interesting because so much of what we think about Coda is dark and brooding and, you know, what's his emotional state. But here he's just like, is this a game that's about having fun? What a foreign concept. Or at least about being silly, if not having fun.
There's a bit more to this one, but still, it's not really communicating anything. It's kind of just weird for weirdness' sake.
You can explore the furniture maze a bit, right?
So,
I'm curious if I had
throws it
to.
out and
No.
starts over. This time he comes at the prison idea from a different direction.
Oh, I forgot to check and see if I could use this guide on the very first one. Damn it.
We could restart the level and try it. Let's play through it all the way, and then let's go back and restart the level and try it.
Sure.
Alright, you got all that?
Yes, I got all that.
Now you can escape from any prison.
Now you can pick up anything. Can you see what that says? No, probably not.
No.
The texture hasn't quite popped in. Oh, I was trying to figure out if it said a different word before you got closer or not, but I don't think it did.
And of course, now the table is gone and you can't begin the chain of events to escape.
Stop being so solution-oriented,
Here's a version where there
Davey.
are no bars, but you can't actually get to the well. And then a version where the inside of the prison is the outside and the outside is the inside. Let me just blink you real quick through a few more of these. I mean, he really unloaded on this prison idea. There's nearly a dozen of them. Personally, I think it's awful to watch this, to see a person basically unraveling through their work. And for what? Like, at what point do you just go, maybe there are game ideas other than this prison that I could be working on? But Coda doesn't have that voice telling you to stop, that particular mechanism of defense against yourself. Without it, you just spiral. And so he keeps going and going and going and going and going, and then he hits on something. And he likes it. And that's it. He's done. He stops making prisons. This is the very last version of the prison game that he created. And the reason I think it works is that the prison is not actually in it.
Right. I definitely don't know that I agree with... Well, okay. Davey sees that whole prison sequence as spiraling around himself or whatever. I still see it as kind of an artistic working out of an idea. Like, there's something he's trying to communicate and he's just not satisfied with it.
Like, Impressionist painters painted the same thing 100 times. And I don't think it was because they were trying to get it perfectly. I think it was because they, you know, learned new things about themselves and their process every time they did it. I don't know.
Yeah, or it could be because they're trying to get it perfectly, but it's because they have an idea and they're not... I don't understand how Davey is approaching this one here.
Your viewpoint's completely locked here, right?
Yep.
It's a conversation. And so this is what Coda wants, is to be able to talk to someone, to share what's on his mind, and to get some good advice from someone who knows. But the irony is that even in this scenario, you're still talking to yourself. You know, all of these games so far are Coda talking to himself.
See, I do kind of agree with that. Like, I have to see these as primarily being about Coda's own experience in one way or another. I mean, they're art, but you can only make what you know, right? You have to at least be able to imagine something. I mean, the default interpretation would be, and maybe the wrong one, but it's like, if he's making these games and not showing them to other people, then yeah, I think you can read it really as an expression of self.
Sure.
This is an interesting new conversation tree. There was no phone in the prison.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I can
That
see why he
was
considers
different.
this a fitting conclusion to the prison games. After all of the obsession and frustration, just to be told by someone you can trust that things are going to be okay. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, but it's still a cop-out. Ah!
So what would it look like if Coda wanted to make a game about talking to someone other than himself? To me, this environment is meant to represent Coda's puzzle, with the two doors on either side and a dark transitional space between.
Oh, I'll just get this over with. Fine. Hello, creepy person.
Why don't you do some chores?
You'll notice that the quality of the art is a step up from previous games,
I
including
did
this
notice
new and
that.
improved chat system, which he started using from this point on. From here on out, he begins putting much more effort into the visual polish of his work, and this particular game took 2 months to create as a result.
This is the first time we're hearing dialogue in the music, right? Or a vocal track, rather.
True. What exactly is supposed to be different? I guess that it's in the center of the screen.
Yeah, it felt pretty subtle to me.
Speaking of demons.
I always find a vocal track in music and games very powerful. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Maybe because it's so rare. You don't see it often in games.
Because, okay, here's part of the problem, of course, is that Davey presents this as Coda talking to someone other than himself, but, like, any character Coda writes necessarily has to come from his own head. It doesn't have to be a version of himself, but it has to be someone whose headspace Coda understands.
Right.
Like, this is still fundamentally him talking to himself in that he made this game. Hey, I actually saw the dishes
After the
pop back in
intense
that
set of
time.
prison games, his house cleaning level almost feels like cleansing.
No, it
It's the
doesn't.
moment after a particularly difficult or traumatic experience where you just need to let it sit and digest inside of you, and eventually cohere into something meaningful. know that Coda really liked this game. Of all of his work, actually, this was the only one that he called me up to ask me to come over and look at it. This was during a period of a few months where he was like grossly happy all the time, just walked around with a constant smile on his face.
Interesting. This, I have to admit, I'm kind of unnerved by the repetitiveness of the music and the vocals.
And the repetitiveness of the task, everything about this.
But the music itself, it started out vaguely soothing, but it's the same thing over and over and over again. I'm trying to, because I know the pillows are going to need to be straightened again. I'm trying to catch it when it happens. That's why I keep going over there. Damn it.
I'm glad he made this. I'm glad he found some peace.
This is weird. This is not peaceful. This is creepy and strange.
But, of course, it can't last. The music stops, your companion is gone, it's time to leave. The door at the top of the hill is now open as well. Again, you can't stay in the dark space for too long. You just can't. You have to keep moving. It's how you stay alive.
So that symbolism is not something that we picked up on in our first playthrough. That this is the dark space between the two doors. This is the puzzle level, because there's a door at the bottom. You do some stuff in the middle, and then there's a door at the top.
I suppose that's interesting. I can sort of see it.
And it's dark and cold in here, but there's a house that makes you feel warm and safe, and maybe the implication is that Coda actually did enjoy being in that dark and cold space, because he had his own house in there, so to speak. I don't know.
But it was unnerving, and I can't imagine... Okay, either Coda knew it was unnerving and weird and, creepy, or he didn't. I'm gonna say it was. That was a distinctly unsettling thing, and I think it's on purpose. Because in the space in between you're just spinning your wheels? I guess that sort of works.
Yep.
Huh.
Which is the whole point of the puzzle doors, right? That sooner or later...
No, it's not, because this is the first time you... Wait, because in a puzzle door, it's a one-way motion that you can still get back into the space between from the other side. Unless the designer closes the door behind you, puzzle...
In the puzzle... Oh, you can get to the gray space, you just can't get behind it.
Right. That's... Okay, problem with the metaphor, because... or rather, problem with Davy's interpretation of that as being the puzzle, because the puzzle, the point is, the difficulty is finding the way out from the space in between. Maybe. I don't know. That could be full of shit.
You have to pick up and move. I really thought that was the point of it.
Yeah, I don't know that I agree with him there.